2,057 words.
6 new scenes that you hadn't even
Had
thought
not
of yet.
thought about, yeah.
That you literally just thought of just now.
These are concepts I've never had anybody sit down and face me with questions like this to write against.
Our goal today is to take a short idea and begin to expand it into a bigger idea. Welcome to another Story Questions writing session. CMS, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Today, we're going to help CMS in his quest to turn a short film idea into a feature script. He just told me a moment ago that he actually hasn't started his feature script yet. So that's what we're going to kind of do here today. Yeah.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
This is going to be amazing.
As we do it, we're going to witness how powerful questions are during the writing process. To anyone watching this, we encourage you to write along with us. Basically, we're going to take a small idea and see if we can expand it into a larger idea. This session can help, I hope it can help with any idea that you have. So that's what we're going to kind of learn here as we go along. If you only watch or if you only listen, I believe you can still learn a lot, but really our goal here is to have you write along with CMS, who's gracious enough to do this with us. So yeah, again, thank you. We believe that's how you're going to get the most out of this session. We're going to give you the questions and we're going to guide you. So CMS, are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay.
A comment?
Yes.
So first of all, it's the greatest honor possible to be invited to Dave and Karen. Thank you for inviting me to be part of this Film Courage family, which is just an extraordinary channel. And I feel blessed to have an audience here because I am excited about turning the red market into a feature. Mm-hmm. And to me, my goal will be to see this turn into a feature in the theaters. Yeah. And so I feel that you have now, joined me in this quest instead of a journey of this mission to turn the red market into that. And if I may mention with the red market, it's seen over 400 festivals. It's been entered into over 400 festivals. It received official selections in over 60 festivals, and it won 22 awards. And many of the trophies from those awards are now at the Brian Cutler Actors Studio.
Nice.
And, it's a team effort. It's a team sport because everyone who participated from, Brian and Jill and Ramiro, who's the producer, to the cinematographer, Shyle, to all the cast and crew and all the talented actors really brought this to life. And so this was my proof of concept, which really yielded a lot of fruit. And now I'm hoping that it becomes a feature. So this will be, you've become my accountability partner now.
We'll see.
To ensure that this moves forward and keeps moving forward.
Well, we're going to test. We're going to put it to the test.
Yep.
You also said we had a short interview with you, and you said you don't have writer's block. So we're going to put that to the test as well. We're going to find out. I'm going to have you start here, if you don't mind typing. All right. You don't have to type yet, but we're going to basically begin this session with gratitude.
Great.
So I want you to take a moment. Just write down, I know you expressed some gratitude to us a moment ago, but it doesn't have to be that, but just take a moment, write something down that you feel grateful for. Just take a moment, express your gratitude. So we'll start with that.
Okay, before we start the timer, how long do I have to write this?
This one I'm not gonna do a timer.
Okay, got it.
But I guess I will.
Do I have more than one? Can I put more than one thing down?
Yeah, you can put more than one thing. We're gonna begin with gratitude, and
yes.
I guess every time we have a writing session, it's gonna be 3 minutes every time. Right. So just to stay punctual, I will do the 3 minutes starting now.
I honestly feel like I've covered my points. Do I need to keep going?
No, that's perfect. That's
I feel
great.
like I'm done.
So you did that in a little over 2 minutes. Excellent. Yeah, it's great to see you. You have a lot of gratitude flowing through you.
I do. You want to hear it?
No.
Okay.
That's
You'll
just
read it
for
later.
you.
No, I'm not. I'm a PC guy. Do I need to save something? Do I press anything?
You don't have to yet, but yeah, there's a file button. There's a file.
Yeah, it's
and
like
then
the usual.
the menu, and you can press save.
Yep, I see it.
Yeah.
Got it.
But yeah, just
Command S. Right.
yeah, Command S.
Gotcha. Okay.
I should mention, with all of our writing today, don't judge, don't edit, just write.
Got it.
So yeah, great job. That was a great start. So
Thank you.
You got the fingers flowing. You're warmed up.
I have 7 gratitudes. They progressively get more deep.
Wow, that's impressive. That's impressive. Again, our goal today is to take a short idea and begin to expand it into a bigger idea. And so there are many places we could start. What I would like to try here is I'd like to start by thinking a little bit about the transformation of the main character in your story, Zephyr. So those thinking at home, just your main character in your story. So here's the question I'd like you to type. If you were a photographer taking photos of the main character, what is the before picture of the main character at the beginning of the story? And what is the after picture of the main character at the end of the story? And so in your case, I want you to not just think about the short film, but I want you to think about the larger story here. Like, if this is a bigger story and you're really going to take this character on a journey, I want you to be thinking as we go along, it's all about the feature, not necessarily the short film. Mm-hmm. So that's the first question. I have a timer here for 3 minutes. Ready?
I am ready.
All right.
I was born ready.
Born to deal.
Born to deal ready. Or born ready to deal. It's okay to have spoilers, right? I mean, it's just writing. I mean, I can talk about the ending, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is your story. You're the only one that's going to see it, really. All right, and that is time.
Oop. Okay, 3 more words there.
That's totally fine. Yeah, no, yeah, we're not recording the screen, and so everything you type is it's basically just for you. I'm curious, how difficult was it for you to answer that question?
I mean, I know the story. I feel like I know what I'm planning. So I didn't struggle with it per se, but it is forcing me to, anytime you exercise the synapses, it sparks more. Like you start to generate more. You're putting the mirror up and saying, okay, now you got to come up with it. You have to explain what you're thinking. You can't just think it. You've got to express it. So it becomes a written word rather than an idea. So I had ideas for what we're going to do with him beyond the short film.
Okay, and then I'm just curious, which was easier for you to sort of imagine, like him at the beginning of the story or him at the end?
Well, gosh, David, it's tough to answer that question because I'm feeling good that your guidance by asking me questions is giving me a comfort level of having an answer. I'm not feeling like I'm struggling. I'm not doing A/B comparisons either. In candor, I'm not struggling with either. It's structure. You're helping bring structure by asking the question because I haven't written this down yet.
Yeah,
I didn't put this on paper yet.
Yeah, we're doing it right now live. This is great.
So I'm not finding it hard. I'm finding it fun.
Okay.
I enjoy the experience of being asked questions to then force myself to, or it's like being asked to put it on paper or computer.
No, great. When you think about the beginning and the end, as you were thinking about, okay, this is where the character is at the beginning, this is where he is at the end, did you start to imagine any scenes as you were doing that?
I do imagine scenes. I do see him in my head. Evan is a very striking looking actor. Like he has a very extreme character. I think he has a character look, although everyone has a different opinion about that. He has this curly blonde hair and it's very striking. Yeah. So it is easy to imagine him as this character because, it's larger than life. He's larger than life as a person too. And so I'm starting to imagine, him in the imbroglios and the challenges he had. It's alluded to in the short. However, the short only touches on it. There's a lot left to the imagination. And so I'm now imagining these scenes bubbling up in my head.
Have you written any of those scenes yet?
No.
But you can
honestly,
when you
swear.
It's okay. But when you start to think about the beginning and the end, you can start to see like, okay, these are maybe scenes that could get them from the beginning to the end. All right, that's what we're going to do right now.
I can say with integrity, I have not touched even one word of the feature script. So this is it.
So that's what I want you to do now. Then, so let's try that. When you think of the image of the image of the main character at the beginning, the end, and you're having these scenes in your mind, we're going to take 3 minutes, and we're just going to start pouring some of these scenes out now.
Copy. Okay. So do I need to write the question or just do the scenes?
Let me see. Basically, what are the scenes that could cause the ending image? All right, I guess let me give you the full question here. I'll have you write this question down. When you think of the image of the main character at the beginning of the story and the image of them at the end, what are the scenes that could cause that ending image?
You mean the actual image from the short?
No, this is the feature. We're only working on the feature now. So you're thinking of like this bigger story. So you're trying to imagine. Yeah, but I know that short has its own. But I'm trying to. But that may or may not be the image of the bigger story.
Right. Well, I'm open-minded. I'm not sure that the feature needs to end that way or will end that way. And maybe there's a sequel. Who knows?
Well, I mean, what we're hoping here is I'm hoping to maybe as we go along infuse thoughts and questions so that maybe you start to see this whole thing in a new light.
Yes.
All right. So you're ready with the question you have there?
I am ready.
Okay. 3 minutes.
I'm going to do this in key points, right? This is the way I'll do this. I'll do this in key points.
All right, and we have reached our time.
Okay.
Wow. Did you feel like you had a lot more? You could have going for a little while longer on that one?
Yes, I mean I have 7 potential
That's what I was going to ask.
beats. I came up with 7 beats in 3 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Now, none of these, except for maybe one, I was thinking about one of these beats already, but none of them I had thought about before sitting down at the writing session here. But I have, I was able to carve out at least 6 of them for the first time.
Oh, wow.
Well, so you're forcing yourself to
6 new scenes that you hadn't even thought of yet. That you literally just thought of just now.
Well, that's true, but I came with an open mind. In order to be receiving information, you have to be a blank slate. You have to be a palette. This is what I teach actors. Mm-hmm. Actors go in with a preconceived notion. They have jewelry, or they have their hair done a certain way, or they have a certain wardrobe in mind. I said, just show up with like a t-shirt and some pants and don't do anything. Just be prepared to be an open palette. As a writer, I feel like you have to be an open palette, like it's like a canvas, I don't mean palette, I mean canvas. I meant be an open canvas. As a writer, I feel like you have to be open, like it's improv. I studied improv. I should be able to improv scenarios, and some of them will be crap, and some of them will be great. When I wrote the short, I rewrote it a few different times, but I also took the time to have the actors perform it. So in class, I asked the actors to perform it, and what worked, I kept, and what was not working, I trimmed out.
Exactly.
And it's kind of like being a comedian. You work the jokes that make them laugh, and you take out the jokes that don't make them laugh. And so, I might come up with 100 scenes, and I want to bring it down to 50. That's what I'm thinking.
No, I love it. I love 6 new scenes and
6 new ones.
And definitely appreciate you going through this process with us. You have 2 people here with you watching you, and you're still able to get all of this and be productive. So that's excellent.
Well,
it makes me feel good,
right?
That we're
well, one life to live. Well, I said this to you earlier, and I don't take it for granted. You have millions of people in Los Angeles, probably thousands of whom would die to be sitting here right now. Never take it for granted.
Well, I don't. Yeah, that's. I don't know if we would say that at all, but you humble us. We appreciate it.
Well, I'm just trying to speak the truth, but yes.
All right, so now we've thought about the transformation of the main character a little bit. We've actually come up with new scenes. You've sort of have like beats for new scenes already. We're gonna switch gears just a little bit for a moment. I want you to write down this question. Beyond the idea, characters, and plot, what is driving you to write this story? So beyond the idea, characters, and plot, what is driving you to write this story?
Oh boy.
Yeah, we're gonna sort of step away from the story for a little bit and just sort of think about your connection to the story, or the story, or just I don't want to overspeak it. I'm just gonna let it land. You just take your time with this question. Beyond the idea, characters, and plot, what is driving you to write this story? I'm setting the timer now.
Okay. I think I got it.
You got it. Oh, great.
Yeah.
All right. You finished 2 minutes and about 2 minutes 30 seconds. You finished about 30 seconds early on that.
Now, do you want me to fill the whole time? Because I really got everything I wanted to say.
No, if you feel like you got it, we'll call it there.
I do type fast.
Hopefully, we didn't mess up people participating at home or whatever.
Sure.
What are your thoughts on that writing session?
Well, I don't think anybody wants to feel like they sound like they're being a jerk or anything. I don't want to play to the audience, meaning it's like what I really thought I put down.
Okay.
And it might be rough for some people to imagine that's the way somebody works, and it's a business. We're in a business, and I try to look at it that way. I think that if someone's going to put money into a project, they're going to want to get paid. I'll leave it at that because you can read the rest, what I wrote. But I want to find projects that will get made.
Yeah.
I don't want it to just be in my brain or just on a piece of paper, that gets printed out and sits on a shelf. I want it actually to make it into the world. And so I had to think hard about that for a second and go, what do I really want? Other than being famous and successful and rich and whatever that is. I wanted to think about the art aspect of it, which is, I feel like I do crave, as most people do, I do crave to be an artist. But, I'm a freshman artist. I tell people this all the time. I've been writing my whole life, and I'm still a freshman writer, truly. I type faster than I write, if that means anything to you. I'm working on trying to slow it down so that I craft better stuff. Because typing fast is kind of a curse, too. Because it allows you to just write a bunch of stuff. I don't want to write a bunch of stuff. Now that we have voice activated, I do a lot of voice to text. And now that we have that, the writing can be even messier. I really have to sit down and carve out the real good stuff out of when I'm dictating. I want to take back a lot and get rid of it and cut it out and make it better. And that's what revisions are about. So, I like to hand it out to somebody and read it and give me their opinions about it. I mean, is that a bad thing? For those of you who are listening, I don't know whether some people don't want to share their writing. Oh, someone's going to take my idea. I'm like, yeah, I'm more worried about someone taking my title, because the title of my other feature is kind of a fun title. I'm more worried about that than, because ideas are free flowing. Everyone can contribute. The actor's going to contribute on the set anyway, But what was my main driving thing? It was hard. I had 4 different possibilities, and I feel like all of them are driving me, not one thing.
Yeah, it could be that. And was that helpful to have that, to take time and write that down?
Yes, it was a harder question than the first one. Yes. So it took I had to do a little soul searching.
Good.
I did it quickly.
That's good. All right, thank you for that, CMS. Now, what we're going to do now is we want to think a little bit about the world of the story. Now, this is a very sort of big thing, especially, you have sort of a special world of your story. We could come in from so many different angles. There's so many questions here. For these purposes, I'm only going to throw one sort of simple question at you, just to get you to think about it a little bit. So go ahead and write this question down here. Would you want to live in the world of your story? Would you want to live in the world of your story? So that could kind of take you in so many different directions, even just that one little question. So I'm going to go ahead and set the timer. right, that is time.
Okay.
You know, did that question open things up for you a little bit?
It's interesting. Yeah. I mean, I'm struggling, of course, with the world building because, it's actually, I'm imagining what that world is now. I'm like now forced to imagine it. I wasn't a big comic book reader as a kid, but I'm getting more into, the enthusiasm of the comic fans.
Nice.
And so some of the world building, we use the phrase, it's like what a universe or world building or, whatever it's called. And if it sounds dorky and I don't know what I'm talking about, it's because I don't have a formal, I'm not involved. When I was a kid, everybody did Dungeons and Dragons. I was the one kid who knew nothing about Dungeons and Dragons. Everybody was doing it when I was a child. And I was a total outlier and had very few friends because I was awkward in those ways, very awkward in those ways. But as an adult, I noticed that people who are fans of fantasy comic books, these kind of world building universes and stuff, they tend to be very generous of their thoughts and time and, help. And, I recently introduced to a guy who's like into comics and he's a friend of a friend. And I'm starting to imagine from this question, what the colors of this, what does it look like? Are people flying around, in this future? Is everybody still on the ground? I always imagine there aren't going to be that many flying cars because can you imagine the chaos of it? So it's forcing me to think about, do I want to live in that? I mean, is it WALL-E? Is it, is it going to be, am I going to get to be 600 pounds? What does the future look like with robots doing everything? So it's sparking more ideas. I hadn't thought about robots so much in the red market, but I realized that's kind of a mistake because won't there be robots doing all kinds of stuff in the future? We didn't have a budget for robots.
That's true.
Yeah,
no, I hear, and so I'm curious, would you want to live in the world of your story?
I said yes, maybe.
Yes, maybe.
Yes, maybe. There were things that scared me about the future world. But I would say if I were to put it on a scale, yes.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, if money was less relevant in the future, I'd probably be even more excited. Not because I'm a socialist per se, I'm not. But the struggle for money gets harder as you age. So of course, as you get older, your ability to be comfortable in life depends on how you saved. And so in the future world, if things are like the robots take care of you and, wipe your drooling and the robots are wiping your mouth. Yeah, sure. They don't care. It doesn't sting to them, to change your adult diaper or whatever. So maybe I was thinking about if the robots are doing all the good stuff, cooking, cleaning, I'd be down.
I'm trying to think of the robot from the Jetsons. I can't think of her name, but yeah, Rosie, is that her name?
Rosie, the robot. Yeah,
doing all the home.
Yeah,
the cooking, the cleaning, everything.
Yeah, she kind of floats around on a anti-gravity.
All right, so now we're going to come back to your main character, Zephyr.
Okay.
This is a character learning from what you've done with the short film thus far. We learned that this character you say is drowning in debt. You may already know how Zephyr got his debt, or you may not. But for this one, I still want you to write this question down. Can you think of 5 ways of how Zephyr got into this severe debt? Can you think of 5 ways of how Zephyr got into this severe debt? For those of you watching, maybe you can write this question down. Can you think of 5 ways your main character is in severe trouble? So this is for those watching. Can you think of 5 ways your main character is in severe trouble?
Do you want me to answer those 10 things then, or just one?
You just do the
5.
first 5 for
Okay,
Zephyr in terms of how did Zephyr get into his dad?
Okay.
Okay, here we go. Set the timer. And that is time.
Okay.
Did you already have an answer for that one? Did you
No.
already?
Well, I had one. So I came up with 4 more.
Oh, great. So, okay.
I had one.
You
in
had
mind.
one. You had one in mind already.
Yeah, you're tough, man. You're
And then
pushing the limits
now
here.
okay.
Forcing.
How was that coming up with 4 new ones?
I feel like I'm pretty good. You know, one thing I think that's helpful when you have more life experience is it's, you know, I like to use the phrase, people say, well, you're such a genius. I've heard this so many times, like, oh, you're such a genius. You're so smart. And I'm like, maybe, or the other option, what I like to say is genius is just experience in disguise. You know, when you've had so many experiences, you can improv stuff. It's like, oh, you've seen that before. I've seen that movie before. I've seen the end of that story before. So let me throw it out there. I don't want to recycle too many filmmakers' ideas. However, I did, you know, I tried to use today's world and I applied some classic hard luck stories to that. Nice. You know, you take, I mean, Ron Howard says maybe there's only one story. I don't know what he means by this, and I adore Ron Howard's films. Many of them are wonderful. So this is, Mr. Howard, this is not a critique of your, you know, what you said. But I did not understand what he meant when he said there's only one story. You know, he did an interview for Masterclass and he says, maybe there's only one story. And I didn't understand what he meant by that because it didn't track for me. But I think he's alluding to the fact that what I believe he meant, and I didn't ask him, I want to ask him, but I don't think he meant that exactly the way it came out. I think he meant to say that there's not a lot of new stories, there's just different ways to interpret them. And there was a very prominent attorney whom I hired to do a gig, and he was very, very expensive in my mind. And then later I realized there's no such thing as very expensive. It's just, you know, it costs what it costs. And the idea of expensive is perceptional. And what he said was, ideas are free flowing. It's the expression of the ideas that can be protected. And what that made me understand about copywriting and about writing scenes and things like that. Yeah, I mean, we've seen this before. I've seen this before, these scenarios, but I need to apply a different spin to it to make it interesting. Otherwise, it's like, I've already seen, you know, been there, done that. This is boring. I don't want to be boring. So I just thought about, okay, what are all the current things going on in the world that might be even bigger in the future? I'll just throw one out there. Crypto, you know, I threw something in there about crypto. You know?
Yeah. Okay.
And I'm not a crypto guy, so I just threw it in there. So I have to go study crypto now and learn more about crypto.
That's good. So yeah, I love it. So you came up with
4 out of 5.
Yeah, 4 out of 5 plus, you know, previously 6 new scenes.
Yep.
So, you know, we're making progress.
You are. It's good. You're putting the mirror up in front of me. I'm forced to think. It's generating. Synapses are firing.
We're going to write down 2 longer questions here.
Yes.
For this next one. What song or songs does your story make you feel like? And how does the story live in the tone of that song throughout the entire story? What song or songs does your story make you feel like? And how does the story live in the tone of that song throughout the entire story? So
how does the story live in the tone of that song?
Yeah, or I guess you could say, or songs throughout the entire story. And then if you can also type this question just in case. If you can't think of any songs, what is the overall feeling you want the audience to have while they are experiencing this story? Can you express that feeling and write to it? Can you express that feeling and write to it?
So what song or songs does your story make you feel like? How does the story live in the tone of that song or songs throughout the entire story? If you can't think of any songs, what is the overall feeling you want the audience to have while they are experiencing this story? Can you express that feeling and write to it?
Yeah, these are too long. So it gives you something to breathe in, think about. I'm going to go ahead and set the timer.
All right. Yeah, I feel like I've said everything I want to say.
Okay, wow, okay. Ending the session a little bit early.
How much time did I have left?
You had about 20, 23 seconds
Oh
or
my
so.
goodness.
But excellent. Which one did you are you a song person or are you a music person? Did you gravitate to that one?
Music. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, please finish.
I was just wondering, did you sort of gravitate toward the songs or did you just gravitate toward the feelings?
So I went with the third option. What was the overall feeling you wanted the audience to have while you're experiencing the story, and can you express that feeling and write to it?
Nice. Okay.
And I did. Do you want me to fill the whole 3 minutes? Some of these things I need more than 3 minutes. Others
No, I
I'm
get
running
it.
out of time.
That's totally fine.
I'm running out of ideas in the 3 minutes.
Okay.
Because I said what I wanted to say.
Perfect.
I feel like I said what I wanted to say.
Perfect. So overall, how do you feel do you feel like the 3 minutes is putting like a certain pressure on you? Is
No.
it good or bad? Or?
No, I just don't want to write gibberty goobly gop that doesn't mean anything just to fill up the space.
Totally.
If that's acceptable to you.
No, it's totally
How's
fine.
my score? Am I getting a good report card?
Yeah, you're getting an excellent
Okay,
report
good.
card. Yeah, no, because you're.
It's going in your file.
Oh no, my permanent record. You had the $80 million. It was just around the corner, and we were about to get financing. They're like,
Are you able to comment on that at all? What feeling do you want the audience to have with this project?
Well, am I allowed to talk about it?
If it's up to you,
I would
do you
love
feel
to.
comfortable?
Well, I thought, I'm willing to talk about everything I wrote.
Okay.
If you're willing to
I'm just
hear it.
curious in this sense, just to.
Well, can I do a readback of some of it? Just a little snippet?
Just the feeling.
Sure.
Yeah, just this one. Yeah.
Well, I feel like I don't, I might be stubborn here, but I want my feature to have all original music. And that's what I did with the Red Market. I had 3 composers work on the Red Market.
Okay.
It's all original music. Nothing on that score was ever heard before. And I went through a couple of composers. We gave them a couple of them. We gave some credit to. I gave credit to a composer who only had a small amount on the track, but the majority of it was Daniel Z, and he really did just a really wonderful job with the music, coming up with the ideas the way I imagined them and spoke about them. And so I was talking about the Highlander. I'll mention the Highlander. Queen made this original soundtrack, and it was just all new stuff. And I'm imagining all new material.
Nice.
So I would rather come up with new songs for the film. I don't live with specific songs. I like music. I listen to music. But it's kind of like the Super Bowl. I enjoy watching the Super Bowl, but I couldn't really tell you about the plays. I enjoy music very much. I couldn't tell you about the artists. I like songs, so specific songs. Nothing popped out at me for this one. Maybe The Eye of the Tiger. That's about it. Other than that, I only really wanted to talk about making new music for this project.
Nice.
So that's what I really spoke about.
Perfect. No, I mean each writer is different. Sometimes on our side of things, we hear from writers. Some writers like to have certain music playing. They like movie soundtracks or certain music playing while they write, and that sort of stimulates them. So there's that aspect to it, but then there's also the aspect here where, maybe there's just a certain feeling that you want to like give to the audience. So just having that in mind, that might just help with the overall tone of the story you're writing. So that's what these questions that we're trying to get at there. Yeah.
Great. Well, I think it's good because, there's affinity, for what other people are thinking and doing, and I like to think about other ideas. I did not imagine yet that I would be thinking about songs when I wrote a feature film. I don't know. Maybe some people put those like ideas in the script that says, think it's playing against this music and that music and that. I haven't gotten to that point yet. Maybe that's me not yet advanced to that level of writing. I don't imagine a song when I'm writing a scene. I imagine the scene, and then I'd like somebody who's. I live across the street from an accomplished film composer. Like my home, I live in a very nice, beautiful neighborhood that I want to say I just lucked into, because when I moved there, it wasn't the best. It wasn't like Burbank's premier neighborhood or anything, but now it is. I just sort of got in the right spot. And my neighbor across the street, he's only been there a few years, 6 years or so. He's an accomplished film composer. And he watched my film and he gave me some comments about the music. And he said, you know, you don't necessarily need to have music there. And I said, well, that's an interesting observation. I wasn't criticizing. I was open-minded about his comments because I asked for them. And he gave me his rationale, and he said, you don't always need music, and maybe you don't need any music right there. Maybe take it out. Maybe it's more dramatic if you don't have the music. And you know, it made me think that I know very little about music scores and film scoring, and I need to develop a better understanding. But we all know when we watch a movie, you know, it makes you feel very different depending on what's playing. Mm-hmm. A scene can have a completely different meaning depending on what's going on with the music. And if it's, you know, upbeat or ominous or, you know, slow or whatever have you. So I think your enjoyment of the film is very dependent on the sound of the music, however the music's playing, you know. Totally. And
yeah, I would just add to what you're saying in terms of, we wouldn't say there's necessarily one right or wrong process. You know, we just, everything we've observed and learned is just, you know, everyone has their sort of own way of doing it. So for you, you know, if that doesn't involve music at this time, nothing
right.
wrong with that.
Right.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. This one is going to go a little bit deeper. You don't necessarily have to like say this out loud to me or anything like that, but I'm just going to take you a little bit deeper with this next sort of round I'm going to throw at you here. I want you to take a moment. I want you to think about this. Have you, CMS, this isn't for you to write down yet, have you hit any dead ends in your life?
Don't put this on the computer?
No, not yet.
Okay.
Where everything you tried wasn't working? How many layers of problems did you have like during that time, if you ever hit any like dead ends in your life? So with that sort of in mind, like thinking about your own life and the dead ends you may have hit at different points in your life, I want you to now write this question down. How has the main character's life come to a dead end? How has the main character's life come to a dead end?
Right.
So there might be some stuff that you can just sort of reflect back on your own experiences, you know, some tougher times you've gone through, and now sort of take some of that feeling or emotion or whatever it is and maybe put that into your main character. You have the question. I'm going to go ahead and set the timer.
Oh boy, this is going to be, this is going to be some stuff.
Okay, that is time. How was that for you in terms of thinking of yourself a little bit first and then thinking about that question? Did that factor in at all?
I mean, I'm pretty, you know, I don't ever want to be perceived as like victim and virtue signaling kind of guy. That's not my personality. I have a half sister who was a stranger to me, and when we first communicated, she had some challenges understanding that her outcome was better. Sometimes when people have made mistakes with their family, they might do better the next time, and that doesn't mend the damage of the first mistakes. That just means you possibly learned from those mistakes and you maybe fix some of those errors of, I'm speaking about very personal stuff now, but the reason I open myself up to it is it does color my writing. It colors my conversations because, I have no real, I never had like that Mayberry / Brady Bunch type family life, or that Little House on the Prairie experience, of having a close family. And so, some of these dead ends, and maybe, I say maybe, because I haven't really made that final decision yet, maybe Zephyr will end up having some of the outcomes that I have, just different scenarios of the similar outcomes. In my case, it didn't implode. I didn't implode at the end. I feel like you don't open yourself up as much. You don't allow people in to get to know you that well. You might put on a diplomatic veneer, but the reality is there's a lot of torment and complexity of what's going on underneath the water when you're paddling. And it takes a lot of strength to suppress that because it can affect your relationships. It can affect outcomes of relationships as well. But as a writer, I feel like, Betty Davis says, we're not right, it's not interesting to write about real life. The entertainment acting should be larger than life. It should be a hyperbole of life. It should be, there should be some extremes, I guess. So I think it would benefit me in my writing here, because that's what we're talking about. It's like, it will benefit me in my writing to be willing. You seem very open-minded as people, and you develop a warm and welcome environment. You're a non-judgmental environment. What I wanted to do with Zephyr and what I wanted to do with this film is, something that I heard another director say, and I always credit back to the people. I like to, credit back to the Quentin Tarantino quote. It's like, we're just telling stories here. We don't want to judge anybody. There's no good or bad guys. I didn't want the red market to be about good or bad people, lectures, morals. It's not about this or that per se. I wanted to tell the stories and have them be interesting. And, I'm sure that the most horrible criminal on the planet thinks that, he is a great guy. In his mind, he's a hero, and that's the way they imagine themselves. And they're doing something good somewhere. And so I don't want to judge Zephyr for his mistakes or whatever. It's just choices. I mean, what other choice? He could have had the same bad outcome if he did everything right. If he did everything right, it could have still been a tragedy at the end, So I want to allow myself to be, to have the raw experience of, to callbacks to, you asked me, about my personal experiences. And then you ask me then you want me to talk about Zephyr in that context. And it's like, oh boy, it was rough, some rough moments. Wow. What could that be with Zephyr? Maybe he had those same rough moments. That's why he ended up this way.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you for sharing that, sure. CMS. Yeah, thank you for going there. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
I think that's a big part of it, is like taking this character, sort of like backing them into a corner, putting them in a position where they don't know what they're gonna do, like you don't know what they're gonna do. And I think that's what compels us all, is like we want to see someone in that sort of position where we really don't know how they're gonna handle it. We want to see like, how are they gonna get out of this situation, and so this is hopefully bringing you maybe a little bit closer to that area.
Right.
That's what we're trying to do here.
Right.
We're trying to, and tap into our own thing and see when have I been at a dead end, and then maybe that'll help bridge that gap to get you there in your writing.
Right.
That's what we're trying to do with that one.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So here's the next one I want you to type up. What is the audience going to be rooting for in this story? what is the audience going to be rooting for in this story? You know, when you think of like a movie like Rocky, you know, you think like, what am I rooting for there? Like, what do I want to, like, what do I want to see this character do? I could go on and on, you know, different stories, you know, E.T., but I'll just leave it there. What is the audience going to be rooting for in the red market?
Does it have to have a Disney ending? I mean,
No, it
I like
might not.
happy endings.
It might not.
I do like happy endings.
And maybe you'll take that in a different direction. But we'll start, you know, with all these questions, maybe you start somewhere and then maybe
Right.
it leads you somewhere else. You know, some new
Right.
questions might pop in, whatever it might, but just start there, you know, like always, and we'll see where it takes you. I'm going to reset the timer.
Okay, here we go.
Okay, we have hit our time. Oh, okay, so you had some things to write there.
Yeah, I had a paragraph there.
For a little bit, I wasn't sure, you know, you made it seem like, you know, that was going to be a more challenging question, but yeah, you went
All
with
your
that one.
stuff is thought-provoking,
That's good.
but you know, life's boring without a challenge. You know, if you only do the easy stuff, you know, I have a business where I always tell the staff, you know, do the easy stuff first because you can get it out of the way, and then it gives you time to do the hard stuff. You know, do all the easy stuff first so you're not caught shorthanded. You know, when it comes to writing, I'm not sure I want the easy stuff because it's boring. You know, I mean, it's boring. And then, of course, you know, Anthony de Blasi said to me after he saw my first draft of my feature, you know, that's not this feature, it's a different feature. The comedy, it's a buddy comedy.
Yeah.
I'd never written a buddy comedy, but he read the first draft and he's like, you know, he was trying to be polite. And he said, you know, we need to get David out of the marble, you know, was it David the statue out of the marble?
Yeah.
And his biggest complaint, which I use the word complaint carefully because he doesn't complain about anything really. His biggest complaint was the length, because it's a comedy, it needs to be shorter. And I told him my gut reactions to writing were, I'd rather have something you could take away. I don't get offended by people taking stuff away and say, this doesn't work, let's take it away. But if you don't have anything to take away, you end up with shorter than a film. And then it becomes a TV pilot or whatever, it becomes too short. So I wrote about, at least 120 pages, and he said, you need to get 90 pages out of this 120 pages. And I split the difference. So, I have a lot to say. I'm not sure. I really tried hard with the Red Market to be just telling interesting stuff. It's like I wanted it to be a very non-judgmental, just an odyssey of going through these moments and letting the moments be interesting, as opposed to, yes, there's a cohesive story that's going to emerge out of the Red Market. Yes, that's true. But I don't want it to become I don't want it to become a formulaic project. When people said to me, what's the genre of your film? We won awards. Out of the 22 awards we won Best Science Fiction, Best Thriller, Best Experimental. We had different things. And I pitched it as it was really a non-genre film because it had so many things going on, And I would like the Red Market to have a little romance, have a little science fiction, have a little, mafia. I didn't want it to be one thing. I'm not sure who we're going to root for, because I feel like we could be rooting for the mafia guys to get their money back. Why not? There's not really, hey, you borrowed the money. And I would like the larger than life characters. I don't want there to be evil people. They're not being evil. They just want their money back. They're not like evil for the sake of evil. It's not, I even think Darth Vader has a reason, the way he is, and maybe Anakin, deserved the outcome he got. I don't know. He made mistakes or whatever. So it was challenging, and I was having a hard time answering this question, but I just went for it. And I came up with some different, I started debating it here in this paragraph. I debated it. Well, what about this and what about that?
That's perfect. I like that.
It gives us a little palette, a buffet to work with.
Perfect. And that's the thing. We're, this is you've thought about this, you have the short film, but in essence, you're here starting, you're kind of like starting this project here in the room with us. So yeah, you shouldn't box it in at this stage. This is where it can be free, and this is where you can get different thoughts, and you have plenty of time to let it become what it's going to become. So yeah, we're not here to judge it. We're just here to get these different thoughts down.
Right.
Excellent work so far, CMS.
Thank you.
This is a big question I got coming up. It's multiple questions all in one. This may tie back into the previous questions a little bit. Go ahead and type this one up. Does your story answer these 4 questions? Who's the main character? What are they trying to accomplish? Who or what is trying to stop them? And what happens if they fail?
Okay. Do I have to say yes?
What do you
That's
mean?
the first question. It was 5 questions, right?
Does your story answer these 4 questions? Who's the main character?
Right. Should I just answer the 4 questions then?
Yeah, just work on those 4 questions. Here we go.
Can there be more than one main character?
For these purposes, I would just think through the eyes of Zephyr.
Yes. Yeah, that's he is our main character. Mm-hmm.
And that is time.
Okay. I ran out of time. Okay.
Yeah, you ran it. Were you able to answer all 4 of those questions? No, you didn't.
Not
Okay.
yet.
Which one were you struggling with the most?
What happens if they fail to stop him?
So that last one. So is that the only one you didn't answer?
You didn't answer that one.
But you answered the other 3.
I did.
Oh, great. Okay.
Right.
So that gives you something maybe for later on to
Keep
think
working
about.
on. Yes.
What I want to talk about now is you have a poster for your short
Yes.
film. You have a poster for the Red Market, and the poster says the Red Market, obviously, and then it has this tagline: "Once you are in, there's no way out."
Right.
Now, for some reason, when I looked at that and I saw the film, I watched the film, and I looked at this tagline, something that came to my mind at least was The Firm. You remember that movie?
Yes.
Have you seen that?
Sure.
I'm pointing it out mainly because I want to point out the stakes in that movie. That's what I'm getting at here. So I'm going to just take a moment and sort of highlight some things about The Firm. Here's some key points that come to mind. The Firm is a law firm who offers a position to Tom Cruise's character and nobody else. So that makes it exclusive and prestigious. You have this law firm. They have one position they need filled. They're offering it to one person only. Out of all the law students they possibly could, offer it to. So imagine on the other side of it, imagine you're the only choice of an employer. How can you it almost becomes like a once in a lifetime opportunity.
Yeah.
So that's like one aspect in terms of stakes. There's that kind of pressure. There's also the pressure that Tom Cruise has in terms of he wants to provide a better life for himself and for his family, for his wife. After Tom Cruise accepts the position, after he's been at the firm for a while, he discovers that 4 lawyers under the age of 45 have passed away. So now we can feel like these stakes kicking in a little bit. He then finds out the FBI is watching him. Then the FBI, he connects with them and they tell him that his house is bugged, that his phones are tapped, that his office is wired, and that the firm is watching his every move. And then they tell him no lawyer has ever left the firm alive. Essentially, that his life as he knows it is now over.
Right.
Now, there's a lot more that goes on. There's a lot more that's happening in the firm. I don't want to spoil the whole thing, but we can sort of see how the stakes, just all these things coming down. In your case, if your story with Zephyr, he has this massive debt. But I want to start thinking about is how can we layer on more things, more of these circumstances like piling on him. So that's why I wanted to just use the firm to kind of highlight that a little bit, think about that a little bit, some of those things coming in on this character. And now I want you to write this question down. What are the antagonistic forces that are going to be pushing against your main character in this story? What are the antagonistic forces that are going to be pushing against your main character in this story? So I want to increase the stakes that Zephyr is going to be facing in this story. And then the second part of that is just, how many can you think of right now? So, I don't want you to just try to come up with as many as you can. Good?
Yes.
Okay. I'll set the timer.
It gets tougher by. This is the final exam.
We're heading down the
back in
home.
class.
We're heading down the home stretch here.
Oh, we're heading it. No, it's good. Loving it. How many can you right now?
Okay, that is time.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, part of the point of that one was to kind of like let you know, like he has a certain set of stakes in the short film in terms of he's got this severe debt that he's dealing with, but that's not going to be enough to carry a bigger story. There's going to have to be more, and it's going to have to be layered in. It's going to have to come at him. It's going to have to keep growing and sort of get worse as he gets further into it.
Yes.
And so
the layer cake.
the layer cake, yeah. And so, I mean,
how many layers are in his cake? That's the question.
Originally, I had specific questions that I had. We're not going to do it here, but certain questions that these are just questions to think about. But I had the question of like, let's say this character is going to have a procedure of some sort. Let's say he's going to be in that position. Or he's an organ donor, so he's going to so what if people have been hurt previously from this sort of thing? What if people have died in that sort of position? That's like one layer. That's one potential thing of like, maybe that's going to start to say, I'm not sure if I really want to do this or not. Like there has to be another way. That's going to like maybe try to, because it can't be like an easy decision where he's just going to go for it. So like, raise that up to take it even further than that. Another thing to think about is what if someone close to him has gone through this previously? What if they passed away? What if he's in the same position of someone that he once knew that is no longer here, and now he's facing the same dilemma.
Right.
Like he has the consequences possibly if he doesn't get this done, and if he doesn't come up with the money, he has those consequences. But then he's also facing these consequences as well. It's like, I might not make it out of this. So, those sort of things. So I'm just feeding you that. Maybe that helps you, maybe it doesn't. Again, these are just throwing different questions, different things for you to think about.
Well, it definitely helps me. I mean, of course, I had some ideas as to where I have a certain outcome with the short. I'm not sure that's going to be the final outcome on the feature. I'm not I waffle on the whole sequels thing. Kind of like there's a part of me that doesn't want to make movies that have sequels. There's a part of me that wants to just move on. If you look at some of the best directors, or some of the better directors, I would like to say the best is kind of a tough thing to call somebody the best of anything. I don't really like favorites either. I'm not a huge favorite. Like, what was your favorite food? I don't know. I like food. It's got to be the best of what it is. So when you see directors that make different genres of films, Stanley Kubrick, do any of his films look the same? They're all pretty different. And I'm not sure about the sequel thing. 2010 was not my favorite sequel. And he wasn't really, I don't think he was really involved in it, was he? Kind of, but not really. And so, I don't know if I want the Red Market to have a sequel, but the ending would be affected by the decision to have a sequel.
Exactly.
In a big way, because you know what the short looks like, which I have not released the short to the public other than through festivals. Mm-hmm. There's no streaming of the short film yet.
Big decisions. Yeah. Big decisions ahead. Yep. These are the things to think about. All right. So as I mentioned, we're coming down our home stretch here.
Do we have to? Is that the end?
Almost.
No.
Almost. Not there. Yeah, you're enjoying this.
We're doing an all-nighter.
Just giving you some good things to think about here. I'm gonna throw, for these last two sections that I have for you, I'm gonna just have you just put up two questions, and then let you sort of decide how you want to spend those 3 minutes. But so the first one of the first part is, what does your main character not want to lose? What does your main character not want to lose? And then the second question here is, can you think of 20 risks your main character may have to take?
Yeah. It's like asking me, can you go skydiving? No. Yeah, okay, 20 risks. Wow, that's a lot of risks.
Yeah, can you think of 20 risks your main character may have to take?
Right.
So again,
I did get that part.
Yeah. I'll let you weigh that. I'm gonna get the timer ready here. Here we go.
All right. boy.
Okay, and that is time.
Okay, put a dot, dot, dot there. Okay.
Which of those questions did you tackle?
Well, I tried to answer all of it, so I
Okay, great.
got 5. Okay, I've got 5 things that he doesn't want to lose,
Oh, great. Okay.
and I got 6 things that are risks that he may have to take.
Oh, great.
Yeah, 20 was a tall order. You had me bite my nails.
Was
20.
that overwhelming at all? Would you
No,
rather
I don't get over. No,
Was it? I'm just saying. Would it be like? Would it be better if that was like? Can you think of 5 risks or 10 risks, or was 20? Was that like holy cow, or was that like?
No,
good,
no,
Was it good to be stretched
no.
that way?
No, I'm not afraid to lose anything. You know, I'm not afraid to be ashamed or embarrassed. I'm not easily embarrassed, so I won't be embarrassed by failing to get 20 items. But it's a tall order, so it's like one of those game shows. It's like do 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 do. I don't know what the other. I got you need 14 more.
Yeah.
You have to come up with the other 14 now.
14 more.
Yeah, so it's a good challenge, but
Excellent.
it's good. It's good fuel for the writing session when those moments occur in the feature because clearly there have to be stakes, right? And your questions are raising these questions about stakes, what those stakes might be. So it's interesting. We'll see how it turns out.
Great. Okay. Here we go. So I have 2 last questions for you. These are both sort of related here. The first one is, what is the main problem in this story?
Okay.
What is the main problem in this story? And then the second question is, why do you want to explore this problem?
Okay.
Why do you want to explore this problem?
Okay.
Our last 2 questions of the writing session.
Oh boy.
Good job. You've done
Thanks.
excellent. Yeah, you've typed away. This
Wait,
has been great.
you mean it's coming to the party's over?
Well, we'll talk about we'll talk about it a little bit after, but for now, these are the last 2 questions.
We'll have to celebrate after the premiere.
All right, here we go.
Okay.
Okay, that is time. You did it.
Okay.
You did it. Yeah, exciting.
Wow. This is great. Well, it's very thought-provoking, and thank you so much for serving up these very thought-provoking questions.
Oh, you got it.
That it's a type of it's almost like a I mean, not everybody has the money or the time to go to film schools, writing schools, and also I'm the type of person that's writing, all the time. I'm like constantly writing something. And I do go back, I do have a callback to the guidance counselor who said to me, I was trying to get my college, this is in the 90s, when I actually had these dumb ideas, was doing dumb things in my mind. I was imagining that I was just going to fit the cog in the wheel and be like everybody else, do the right thing and be the right guy and, be that guy. And then it took me a while to realize that I was the right guy. I am doing the right things. And there's no one size fits all on handling life. And so that's why I come with an open mind, because, to me, these are concepts I've never had anybody sit down and face me with questions like this to write against. But I'm sure that if you took a formal writing class, or every professor is going to have a different idea of how to do it. But it's thank you very much for serving up these powerful questions that generate lots of interesting outcomes. Things I hadn't really thought about before for this.
Yeah, I think that's my favorite part. I think just hearing you say that this is a new endeavor that maybe you're going to take on, of writing this short film into a feature film, and that you literally came up with new material, new ideas you hadn't even thought of yet.
Yes.
Already in the session. So
yes.
that makes me feel pretty good.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for doing that with us.
Appreciate that very
Yeah,
much.
and so you've never written in this way before?
Not that I can think of.
Not quite like
I'm
that.
sure writers' rooms are like this, right? Where you have a group of writers working together, probably do that with each other. I'm sure that TV shows with 10 writers probably all banter around and do that kind of stuff to each other. But I've never I've had writing sessions with someone like Anthony DeBlasi and I wrote together. Dean Butler and I had some writing sessions together. We had a TV pilot we worked on back in the 90s, and we wrote together. So we did those types of things together, but it was not like this thought-provoking question session,
And then looking back at it, I'm just curious from the questions that I provided today, or we threw at you today, which ones stood out to you? Which ones you felt really sort of maybe made a difference for you today? Is there anything that stood out a little bit more?
Well, that kind of goes back to favorites. I'm a tough person when it comes to favorites.
No favorites.
It's a tough one. It's kind of like asking, what's your favorite dessert? What's your favorite dinner? This. I don't know. It's tough for me.
How about just facts? Which questions gave you the most? Which ones did you write the longest? Just curious in terms of the most output.
Yes.
How about that?
They're all pretty equal, I would say. Well, the one I had challenges with, quite a bit of challenges, are, what are the antagonistic forces that are going to be pushing against Zephyr in this story?
Yeah.
And we don't want it to be boring. There's that kind of stereotypical, bad guys after him. The debt guy owns the money and blah blah blah. And then I think back to the movies where I find it interesting where the bad guys really aren't the bad guys. I like the movies where it's just, everyone's got a problem to solve. They got something they got to get resolved. And it's not really who's the hero or who's the bad guy. I enjoyed the ending in the Minority Report. It was a happy ending at the end. And I may not want the happy ending at the end. That was one thing I was struggling with. And can you think of 5 ways how he got into this debt? That was not the most difficult one. I have a pretty even amount of writing for every question. And, I would say...
That's okay. That's good.
The photographer question was thought-provoking. I'm not sure I want him to be in the place that he ends up in the short film. And maybe I do want a happy ending, because the short film does not have a happy ending.
Yeah.
but I like happy endings. You know, I like it when the protagonist ends up going off into the sunset. I mean, I think in Django we saw the happy ending, right? So I enjoyed the happy ending with Django. I'm not sure if there is there really a happy ending in Pulp Fiction? You know, I'm not sure who gets the happy ending in that movie. You know, in Interstellar, it's kind of an Odyssey movie. It just kind of goes through things. Interstellar has some analogs to 2001 in that there's a lot of stories going on there. I'm not sure if it's really, you know, if it's sad or happy. Who knows? There's some tragedy. You know, these are kind of very complex movies. And I envision the red market having some, you know, struggle to decide whether it's a happy or sad movie, whether you have heroes or, you know, or not. And that's, anyway,
Well,
I hope I can reserve my answer
No, it's totally, yeah.
for when I really have an answer.
Absolutely. You know, and look, this is essentially your first writing session on the bigger story idea.
Right.
So much more for you to explore, so much for you to figure out. You know, so
Right.
you're already thinking, you know, the whole thing done and the ending, but you know, you're still working on it. I'm curious, will you try something like this again? Would you do this again, like in this
With
sort
you?
of manner? No, not with me.
You mean I'm not invited back? What?
Would
Did I do something wrong?
No, because you mentioned you know, David Lynch and sort of what you pulled from him and the cards, and you mentioned writing and like trying to fragments, you know, something that kind of Anthony Blasi passed on to you. How do you feel about this in terms of like having these questions and writing to the questions?
I like it. Well, I wouldn't mind doing it again with you, but I enjoy. I want to take a look at your book. Of course, I'd like to have an opportunity to look at the book and see how that works. I feel that it's important to have this kind of structure when you're writing a feature film. I don't know what the final film is going to look like yet because I haven't written it, but I'd like to see how it turns out after having these questions, you know, in front of me. Are there more? There are more questions in the book, right?
Yeah, we just went through just a little bit. Yeah,
Right.
Yeah, the book has many hundreds of these kind of questions. Yeah. So
Very good.
yeah,
Well, it'd be interesting to work through my screenplay after reading the book.
Yeah, we're gonna send you, for doing all this with us, we're gonna send you a copy of the book so you'll have it and you can access it however you want.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Appreciate that.
Last thing you do for me, CMS, why don't you go up to the view tab in Pages? You should see like along the top bar there, somewhere it should say view, I believe.
Okay.
And then I think it's like 7 lines down, show the word count. Highlight, show word count.
Okay. 7 lines down. It's
something like that, right? You see show word count.
table of contents, show word count.
Yeah, click on that, and then at the bottom of your pages, how many words?
2,057 words.
There you go.
Is that a good number?
Excellent.
How'd
That's
I do?
excellent. Yeah, that's an incredible writing session.
Great.
Over 2,000 words today.
That's great.
And a lot of new ideas that you hadn't thought of before. Again, CMS, thank you for this.
Thank you.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me over. I appreciate it. Yay!
All right, applause at the end. Applause at the end.
Thank you very much. I feel very courageous at Film Courage.